Welcome to Political Perspectives. If you're joining us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the Washington Examiner channel. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner, and I'm joined for my normal weekly conversation with Byron York. And so, Byron, the big story this week is talk of war crimes or a war crime. There was a story in the Washington Post which gave the clear impression, even if it didn't precisely say, that Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, ordered the killing of survivors on a boat, a drug boat that had been hit with missiles by Special Operations Forces in the Caribbean close to Trinidad. Can you explain this scandal or possibly pseudo-scandal that we're all now looking at?
I'm not sure I fully can. First of all, why is there such an uproar over the United States taking two shots instead of one shot to take out this drug running boat and the drug runners on board? Is it that big a difference? I think part of this is really a battle about the policy itself
Right.
of Donald Trump's attacking drug running boats coming from Venezuela to the United States, using military force to do it, as opposed to, say, using the Coast Guard to intercept them and board them and arrest everybody. That's gonna go through the courts. There's no doubt about that. But I doubt there are that many people who are yelling about war crimes who actually support the policy, but just think somehow the second shot crossed a line into war crimes that the first shot did not.
Right.
Because you've had people talk about the whole policy itself being a war crime. So, I mean, we're going to have to get this adjudicated. It is an aggressive use of executive power. There's no doubt about that. But I think that's basically what's at the bottom of this.
Hegseth revealed at a cabinet meeting Tuesday that the second shot, which killed the two survivors who were reportedly clinging to the boat, happened about an hour or possibly a bit more than an hour after he had left Admiral Mitch Bradley and the others who had been executing the mission. Hegseth had been there watching the mission, the first hit, and had obviously approved this and wanted to be there with the people executing the operation. But he said the boat was hit. There was flames. There was smoke. He didn't see any survivors. Nevertheless, he certainly supported Admiral Bradley in having taken the decision to hit the boat a second time. There are still many details to come out, as you say, but as the fog of war, which was a term that Hegseth used, as that clears and there are more details added, doesn't it look more like the people involved acted reasonably and lawfully?
Well, according to their mission, yes. I mean, now there was some speculation about Hegseth maybe leaving Admiral Bradley hanging out to dry by saying he did it. I didn't do it. I was gone.
Right.
But on the other hand, Hegseth has said, I fully supported what he did. He made the right decision. He acted consistent with the orders that Pete Hegseth, gave. So he has actually supported Bradley. And by the way, Congress is going to be questioning Bradley pretty soon about the details of this. But it all depends on whether the Trump policy gets some sort of legal imprimatur in the next few months. Now, there's another question, which is probably in Trump's mind, which is, does the public really care about this?
Right.
They see these as bad guys. They're coming to the United States, and Trump is stopping them.
Right.
Maybe that's about all they're really thinking about. And I would doubt that any discussion of, quote, war crimes, once it's actually examined, once what happened at the Pentagon is actually examined, I doubt that any really fervor over, quote, war crimes would go beyond the pretty hardcore anti-Trump resistance.
Yeah, Admiral Bradley is widely respected. He's not thought to be the kind of military leader who would break the rules of war, but Hegseth has over the years suggested that the rules are overly restrictive, and critics speculate that he created a culture in which the laws of war might be disregarded. Presumably, these are the things that the congressional oversight will investigate, right?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, certainly since the War on Terror, there have been a lot of complaints that the United States was too fastidious about its attacks on enemies in various parts of the world. I remember John McCain, the late John McCain, doing a hearing about U.S. attacks on ISIS during the Obama administration, noting that probably 75% of air missions toward ISIS went up, flew around, didn't drop any munitions at all, and came home because the lawyers told them they couldn't do it.
Right,
And so there's been a lot of complaints about, quote, rules of engagement and about over lawyering. And
right,
certainly Donald Trump in his campaign against ISIS, which was very successful, made a big point of sort of taking the handcuffs off of military commanders and saying, "Look, go kill these guys,
mhm,
and we'll talk about things later." So I think I think what Hegseth is doing is generally in line with the directions Donald Trump has given the military ever since he first became commander in chief in 2017.
yeah, and it's generally in line, therefore, with also with what the voters voted for in 2024, because they knew that there'd been talk in the campaign about creating a warrior ethos, about reviving the military, strengthening the military, and allowing it to actually to impose American will rather than sort of backing off and deferring. So, but the other point that I made in a recent piece of writing was that the arrival of a story in which there is some suspicion of war crime just fits too conveniently in the Democratic messaging of late. It's not very long ago that we had 6 members of Congress, Democrats, both senators and members of the House of Representatives, bringing out a video and distributing it on X, formerly Twitter, saying that the troops should should disobey illegal orders. And there was bipartisan criticism that because it made it seem like the Democrats were sort of undermining the authority of commanding officers and ultimately of the president. In addition, right outside Southern Command, where Admiral Bradley was supervising this mission, there are billboards which make the same point. Don't follow illegal orders in the campaign against the narco boats, the coke boats. There are former military lawyers who have come out talking about Hegseth being guilty of war crimes, murder, or both. This kind of a size of campaign has to be considered in advance, planned, coordinated, and indeed it costs money. So it does seem suspiciously convenient for the Democrats that the Washington Post would come out with a story about the possibility of war crimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems a little fishy. Clearly, they come out, the 6 come out with this splashy video. You must reject an illegal order, and then they start doing press interviews, and they're asked, "Well, has President Trump given an illegal order?" And they could not give a single example. And
Right,
then, boom, here comes this, and they say, "Oh yeah, this is what we're talking about right here."
right,
So it does seem a little convenient. And the last thing is just in this question of the fog of war that Hegseth mentioned. I'm sure many viewers have seen videos on YouTube, which are basically surveillance videos from U.S. gunships, helicopters, and C-130s flying over Iraq and flying over Afghanistan, in which American crews used high caliber weapons to kill lots and lots of enemy combatants. At least They thought they were enemy combatants. They hoped
Right.
they were enemy combatants, but they couldn't know for absolute, totally sure that they were.
Right.
And these are really lethal weapons that they're using.
Yeah.
People are running around on the ground. They have them in the sights. They take them out. Smoke them. They say.
Right.
And so you think to yourself, that's kind of what's involved in this business.
Yeah.
And if the president makes this decision, they carry it out.
Yeah, one last point, we'll move on to something different, but just one last point I'd make about this is that I've spoken to a military expert who I said the weapon that was used here against this boat was not fired from a missile from an aircraft which was in the region, coming from a ship that was in the region. This was a land-based missile. People say that, well, why didn't they, destroy the boat after having rescued the survivors? But I don't think it's come out that there was any American ship anywhere in the region to do that. And so, there are lots of questions like that. Was there even any possibility of picking up the survivors? But anyway, that'll come up. I want to change to a subject that you wrote about this week, and that is the final, one hopes, the end of another fake scandal, which was about fake electors. This was always very obviously a confected attack against Trump relating to his dispute of the 2020 election. Can you tell our viewers what happened and what happened recently that brought it to an end?
Yeah, I first wrote about this in January of 2022. It was popping up on the left. Rachel Maddow on MSNBC was talking a lot about it. Other people on the left were talking a lot about it. And they came up with this theory that Trump knew, in November and December of 2020, right after the election, Trump knew that he had lost. And the Trump campaign came up with a bunch of Republicans in some of the key states that he had lost, like Georgia and Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. And they had these Republicans declare themselves Trump electors. And this was on December the 14th, 2020, which is the day that the Electoral College met in all the states all around the country. So you had these in Georgia, for example. Joe Biden won Georgia. So the Georgia electors met and cast their votes for Joe Biden. But at the same time, there was this group of Republicans who said they were Trump electors, and they declared themselves to be Trump electors. So the idea was that the accusation was they created themselves as fake electors. They sent their fake electoral votes to Washington, and they somehow hoped that nobody would notice. And when it came time to tally the electoral votes on January the 6th, 2021, all of a sudden Trump would be elected, and people would say, "Wow, darn, I thought Joe Biden won Georgia, but here it says Trump won Georgia."
Right.
So anyway, it was a crazy idea. And at the time, in January 2021, I talked to David Schaefer, who was at that time the chairman of the Republican Party in Georgia and the guy who convened this alternate elector meeting on December the 14th, 2020. And here's what he said. He said that at the time, at that day, December the 14th, Trump was contesting the election results in Georgia. There were lawsuits pending that would contest the results in Georgia. And if Trump had no electors, then if he wins the lawsuit, the electoral result in Georgia is overturned and there are no Trump electors. So he
Mm-hmm.
said they cast themselves as Trump electors on a contingency basis.
Right.
And in case the Trump prevailed in the lawsuit. Now, here was the important thing. If you listen to Rachel Maddow's report and others, she cast this as a secret plot, a secret plan. It was the opposite of that. The Republican Party sent out press releases about this. They invited the press to come. They tweeted about it. They did interviews about it. There were news reports about it. And they hired a court reporter to record everything they said in this meeting.
Right.
So it was very, very clear what was going on. And this was not a criminal act.
Yeah.
Problem was, in 2023, Fonnie Willis, the prosecutor in Fulton County, Georgia, indicted those quote fake electors and charged them with a bunch of felonies. The
Correct.
news is finally, we all know the problems that Fonnie Willis had. Finally, the whole thing was just dropped last week by a prosecutor who had been asked to assess the whole thing. And he said, look, these were a bunch of people acting legally on the advice of counsel. We are not going to prosecute people for pursuing an election challenge that is legal under the advice of counsel. And so they threw it all out. So finally, it's over. But if you remember, there was a lot of back and forth about so-called fake electors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the sort of final point I want to come to. There's an old saying that lie can circle around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And here you have a story which were in a legal dispute, following legal advice, the Trump campaign and the state election authorities put forward an alternative slate of electors, so that if the election was overturned, at least they would have electors to vote for Trump. But there was no pretense on the part of the fake electors that they were going to somehow displace the others. They've just got there, as you say, on a contingency basis. The same might be said, perhaps, about the allegations of war crimes. In the first, the facts are not out. The commanding admiral has not been interviewed. Oversight has not yet been done. But in both cases, the left and the party of the left, the Democrats, put out the worst case scenario. Fake electors, election to be stolen. War crimes, survivors were ordered murdered. There will be an examination of this. It will come out. But the political damage will already have gone around the world before the truth gets out. It's a deeply cynical way of operating, isn't it?
It is, but it works. I mean, it's just no doubt that it works. You come out with a splashy report, like the Washington Post quote war crime story, and everybody starts picking it up and talking about it. Not just other people in the press, but members of Congress and the opposition party, and then perhaps some Republicans waver or they come out in defense of Trump, and all of a sudden you've got a full-scale controversy, and nobody knows exactly what actually happened. So we're in the process of putting our boots on, but it could take a while. It certainly took a while in the fake elector scandal.
Yeah, sure did. Byron, thanks very much for bringing your enlightening views and analysis on these things. Join me again, I think, next week. I would ask all our viewers to join us again next week. Remember that if you've joined on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time on Political Perspectives.